Today is election day in several states, and it's a referendum, I think, in Virginia on the Obamacare health program. It looks like the health care fiasco is having a heavy toll on the ratings of the president. His approval ratings have already fallen to about 40%. A growing number of people are angry at losing their health insurance.
Understandably, around 3.5 million people have already gotten cancellation notices. So now members of Congress are trying to repair the damage from Obamacare. Ephraim Graham has the story.
With growing criticism of President Obama's promise that if you like your plan, you can keep it, now lawmakers from both parties are stepping in to see the president's promise is kept. Two measures are in the works that would allow consumers to keep their coverage if they like it. And Obamacare has also become a key issue in the Virginia governor's race. Republican Ken Cuccinelli is highlighting its flaws.
Absolutely, real life has that effect on people.
It's a great driving force because I think Obamacare needs to be resisted.
With Obamacare's reputation on the line, both the president and vice president are fighting hard for Cuccinelli's opposition, Terry McAuliffe. They told voters no vote should be taken for granted.
Where the other side will generate every single solitary Tea Party sympathizer in this state. They will show up. So it's all up to you.
But the president himself is not popular at the moment. The Obamacare controversy is creating political fallout for the president and the Democratic Party. The approval rating has taken a hit. According to the latest Gallup survey, the president has a 53% disapproval rating, 40% approve. And back in Washington, some critics are stepping up their attacks on the president. A former speechwriter for the second President Bush wrote in the Washington Post, "The president said, if you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period. This was a premeditated deception. This wasn't something Obama ad-libbed. It was a line in the presidential speech that was carefully reviewed by the entire White House senior staff." Obama's own advisors told the Wall Street Journal they knew those 16 words were untrue, but Obama kept on saying them over and over again. If that's the case, then Obama didn't misspeak. He lied. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
It's a terrible thing in a nation like ours that you don't trust the leadership, and I think that's what's happening. When a president loses trust, he's gone. His word doesn't amount to anything, and I think that's what we're looking at now. We've got a man who deliberately lied to get his program through. He was so committed to this socialist agenda that he was going to tell anything, say anything that true or false in order to get it passed. So that's what's happening. We've got a very fascinating story coming up, by the way. Terry, let me ask you, would you go into a strip club to deal with the dancers and be nice to them, or would you stay out?
I have to think about that. I'd have to hear from the Lord on that, I guess I'd
we've
say.
got a pastor's wife who heard from the Lord. It's a fascinating story. It's coming up on this program later on, so you don't want to miss it. Well, the president has also taken action on global warming, but that might not be necessary either. John Jessup has that story from the CBN Newsroom. Here's John.
Pat, the recent pause in global warming could last for another couple of decades and maybe even longer. The world's average surface temperature has not gone up since the late 1990s. The London Daily Mail reports new research shows natural cycles have played a major role in rising and falling temperatures and could explain why the predictions of rising temperatures from man-made global warming have been wrong. The report comes just after President Obama issued an executive order on global warming. It's designed to have federal agencies, along with state and local governments, work together to figure out how to respond to drastic weather caused by global warming. An American pastor imprisoned in Iran is said to be facing life-threatening conditions after a recent prison transfer. The American Center for Law and Justice reports Saeed Abedini has been moved to a prison known to be even more dangerous than Evin Prison, where Saeed was previously jailed. According to the ACLJ, Pastor Saeed is in a ward with men convicted for things like rape and murder. Family members tried to visit him Monday, but were turned away. For more on how you can help push for Pastor Saeed's release, log on to our website, cbnnews.com. Minnesota is a leading fighter against human trafficking, and it could soon influence other states across the country. At a breakfast fundraiser, Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar announced plans to introduce legislation to the U.S. Senate. Minnesota state leaders say St. Paul is setting an example and decreasing the demand by arresting more than 200 men this year for exchanging sex for money. The state also partners with organizations that help and identify women and children as victims, not criminals. The audience at this breakfast heard from one of those victims.
I'm 42 today, and I started at 16. And I just recently got out of the life 4 months ago. I thought this is what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life until I was in my casket buried.
Minnesota hotels are also part of the fight, with managers on the lookout. They make routine phone calls to police to report any strange activity. And Pat, as you stated in the past, this really is a blight on humanity.
It's a shocking thing, the trafficking in women, and I think, as I say, if there was anything that's appropriate for the death penalty, it's in these people who are engaged in this, treating women as objects and animals. But you know, the interesting thing about Minnesota is they have these very beautiful, blonde-headed Nordic girls, and they were highly prized. And so years ago, we did a thing on trafficking, and it was trafficked from Minnesota into Chicago, and then these pimps would pick them up. And
I remember that.
You remember that? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, the whole idea of a blonde, Swedish, Norwegian type, you know, was very highly sought. And as I recall, one of the leading pro football players was involved in some of that stuff. I mean, it was quite we had a member of the Vice Squad from Minneapolis talking about some of these things. It was just shocking. So I congratulate the senator on this action, and I hope others will do the same thing. We've got to stop it. It's just something that we cannot allow in a society such as ours. We must go on the warfare, on the war path, I should say, against human trafficking, whether it's the United States or in India or China or wherever it is around the world. We've got to see it stopped. John?
Pat, chaos erupted Monday in a courtroom at the trial of Egypt's first democratically elected president. Security in Cairo, the capital, is tight as former President Mohamed Morsi faces charges of murder and inciting violence. George Thomas brings us this report from Egypt.
You know, it truly is hard to imagine that more than 2.5 years ago on this very spot, the famous Tahrir Square in downtown Cairo became the focal point, the epicenter for tens of thousands of Egyptians who were chanting, calling for freedom, calling for the removal of then President Hosni Mubarak. Well, this week, another dramatic turn of events in the history of this nation, the trial of Mohamed Morsi and 14 top lieutenants in the Muslim Brotherhood. Egyptians saw Morsi for the first time since his removal 4 months ago. He struck a defiant tone the moment he entered the courtroom. "I am the legitimate president of the republic," he told the judge in a loud voice. "I am here against my will." He even refused to wear a prison uniform, instead wore a dark suit.
He is the head of this court. He refuses to wear the defendant's clothes because he is not a defendant.
Morsi and 14 other Muslim Brotherhood members are charged with inciting murder and could face the death penalty if convicted. The trial fueled anger and protests across the capital city.
This is a show trial. We are telling the judges of Egypt not to take part in this trial.
Morsi was Egypt's first democratically elected Islamist president. But after just 1 year in office, Egyptians had had enough of him. On July 3rd, the country's powerful army removed him from office. Many Egyptians CBN News spoke to defend the moves against Morsi.
The Muslim Brotherhood failed to come up with any good political or economic solutions and instead focused on trying to turn the society more conservative, more Islamic, and people didn't want this.
Since the military takeover, authorities have thrown thousands of Brotherhood members in jail. Hundreds of pro-Morsi supporters have been killed. Now there's growing concern among some that Egypt is turning into a military dictatorship.
The political direction of our country is turning more military. As long as the army is ruling Egypt, the current president does not represent us.
Meanwhile, some 20,000 security forces are on the streets to prevent any potential unrest. George Thomas, CBN News.
Back here at home, the Senate is moving ahead with a gay rights bill, but the measure doesn't look like it has any future in the House. The bill is called ENDA for Employment Non-Discrimination Act. It will ban discrimination at work based on sexual orientation or gender identity. 54 Democrats and 7 Republicans cleared the bill on a key vote Monday, but House Speaker John Boehner opposes it, making it unlikely the House will take it up. Boehner says the legislation will increase frivolous lawsuits and cost American jobs, especially small business jobs. The bill would grant special protection status to gay, bisexual, and transgender people. The Mediterranean diet could help you live a longer, healthier life. Researchers from Harvard and France found that people who followed the diet had a 40% better chance of living past 70 without physical or mental issues. The researchers studied more than 10,000 women over a period of 15 years. They stayed healthy and didn't have diseases like cancer, stroke, heart disease, and diabetes. The diet consists of foods like vegetables, whole grains, fish, poultry, beans, nuts, and olive oil, and less red and processed meats, along with less alcohol. Pat, I don't know about you, but all this talk about food is making me hungry.
Well, I've had a little cereal this morning, so I'm not hungry. Along with some
You're good to go.
Antioxidant berries and a little swig of fish oil. Which, anyhow, did you do this Mediterranean stuff?
Well, you know, I think that's healthy living in general. People kind of acknowledge that. It's not real stringent, but I mean, I think a lot of us try to do it.
Well, it's the question of the glycemic index. You see one of the diet companies pushing that, but that's what it amounts to. Is you know, where does it stand? But it's white flour, sugar, sweets of all kinds, and processed food, and then trans fats, and then you go down the list, and then a lot of red meat is a problem too. So it's not too strenuous, and I really like nuts.
I know you do. Well,
I like oatmeal.
You're kind of a light eater. You don't really eat large meals.
The Lord just took my appetite away, and as a result, I lost about 35, 40 pounds. So
wow.
It's real easy.
The United Nations is warning there is a risk of genocide in the Central African Republic. The country has been in turmoil since Islamist militants ousted the president in March. Islamists are now inciting violence between the two in towns where Christians and Muslims used to live in peace and do business together. Thousands of Christians have fled their homes in the town of Bosengoa after attacks by rebels. Human rights groups have accused rebels of widespread looting, killings, rapes, and recruitment of child soldiers. A New Jersey couple is suing Governor Chris Christie for signing a bill that bans gay conversion therapy. The couple claims the ban violates their freedom of speech and religion because it prevents them from seeking treatment for their teenage son. According to the lawsuit, their son suffers from unwanted gender identity disorder and unwanted same-sex attractions and has even contemplated suicide. The bill bans licensed therapists from helping teenagers who want to overcome homosexual tendencies. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.